next year, after the ban had been in
Chairman,
place for a year.
Mr.
And the
Chairman,
measles,
understanding that you wanted to hold this to a minute and that I don't get to present all the facts and documentation I've got, how about if we just decide to make entries for the record on exactly what the record shows about Mr. Kennedy's participation? And I think he's answered the yes or no question. He takes no responsibility.
Senator Warren, we will do that.
differently.
And Mr. Kennedy, and to all the senators, every senator knows that following this hearing, they will be able to ask you questions off the record and you will be able to put answers back onto the record. So please give that answer. I apologize that we're shutting you off for giving a full response right now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Dion's Daily Dose, face-to-face with Dion and Shawn. So I'm Dion, and there he is.
And I'm Shawn.
Whoops.
Oh, correctly.
That's all right. There we go. Sorry about that. Forgot to click the little mute button. All right, guys. So we're tackling the first of two RFK Jr. Hearings where they're going to confirm or not him as the new director, not
HHS secretary.
Right. I was going to say director of HHS, but I guess it's not called that. So we're going to start at the beginning. I want to show you very briefly why, because you guys should really see the passion that is shown by the crowd, the onlookers that are here for this hearing. And we'll get into more stuff as we go, but that once again, as always, thank you, Shawn, for taking the time to go through and present what he feels is the most important takeaways from this. And I would tend to agree. There's some wild stuff in here, guys. Here we go.
And this is unusual.
This is highly unusual. Look at this. Standing ovation when RFK Jr. enters the room. We love you, Bobby. That's what they're saying. At least that's what I heard.
I think that's what they said.
Yeah. Okay.
Now to the hearing.
Yeah. Which, like Shawn said, and it's absolutely. Oh, you know what? I forgot to show. Well, you could hear them, but let me show you guys. Yeah, I actually, man, as you can see when he comes in, yeah, everyone's clapping, cheering. They say, "We love you, Bobby." I promise. I'll get better, guys. We just did a long stint of pre-recordings, so that we could make sure you guys got videos this weekend. I'm going to be a little tied up, so I'm not going to be able to do the video. So our first clip is Senator Crapo. Okay. Republican from Idaho. And this is at the 3:34 to 5:48. So just a couple minutes. And this is once again, Senator Crapo from Idaho. Crapo from Idaho. Yep.
He's the chair.
He's the chair. Okay. So this guy, Senator Crapo, he's the chair. This is the guy that in the intro clip told him with, I mean, just a piercing gaze, in my opinion, that you need to put these answers on the record. Now, the particular conversation they were having, and we'll get to it because I'm going to play it again at the end, but was regarding Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s trip to Samoa. And they get into it more, but I found it highly, highly suspect the point in time that Senator Warren decided that was enough that she wanted to move on. The timing was highly suspicious.
Good morning. This hearing will come to order. I thank my colleagues and Mr. Kennedy for being here today. Mr. Kennedy, congratulations on your nomination. Throughout this process, Mr. Kennedy, you have been accessible to members and staff on both sides of the aisle and have demonstrated strong commitment to fulfilling the responsibilities of this role. The Department of Health and Human Services oversees our nation's largest healthcare programs, providing coverage for nearly 2 in every 5 Americans. Improving Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP, among other initiatives, presents challenges, especially in the face of a rapidly aging population, stubbornly high costs, and persistent barriers to access. However, this also provides us an opportunity to deliver bold, transformative solutions. As a committee, we share a commitment to advancing common sense, bipartisan policies that improve the delivery of healthcare in this country. This committee has worked to realign incentives in the prescription drug supply chain, to enhance access in rural communities, to expand the availability of telehealth and improve the broken clinician payment structure. Across these and other issues, I look forward to working with the administration to continue pursuing meaningful reforms that serve the American people more effectively and more efficiently. Too often, patients encounter a healthcare system that is disjointed and is a dysfunctional maze. Complex and bureaucratic chutes and ladders have become the norm. Meanwhile, even as healthcare spending climbs, outcomes across a range of conditions continue to decline. Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, you will have the opportunity to chart a new and better course for the federal approach to tackling both the drivers and the consequences of our ailing healthcare system.
Okay. One thing that I found interesting in this, and look, while I love my country, I'll be the first to admit that I don't follow its workings nearly as vigilantly as I should. I don't watch the hearings as much as I should. I don't watch the behavior of our elected officials as much as I should, but that has changed and I'm trying to keep up on it. But one of the things that surprised me was the level of control that the Department of Health and Human Services has over a lot of things you wouldn't think were associated with that. And they get into a lot of it as we go on. But one thing that's interesting is this agency oversees the refugee resettlement, which is very interesting, in my opinion. Very, very interesting, and may come up later. There's a quiz at the end. I'm just kidding. All right. So the next one is Senator Wyden from Oregon.
The ranking member.
Ranking member. All right. So this guy gets on my nerves so bad. He's just,
Are we talking about Wyden or?
yeah,
Okay.
we're talking about Wyden. He gets on my nerves so bad. The guy just, anyway, here we go.
Remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The question before the Finance Committee this morning is whether Robert F. Kennedy should be trusted with the health and well-being of the American people. Committee staff have examined thousands of pages of statements, books, and podcast transcripts in a review of his record. The receipts show that Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power. This is the profile of someone who chases money and influence wherever they lead, even if that may mean the tragic deaths of children and other vulnerable people. Now, Mr. Kennedy is fond of saying he's not making recommendations about whether parents should vaccinate their children. He's just asking questions and giving people choices.
Okay. I forgot to put it up again. Well, it was just him talking. This guy you don't want to see much of, believe me.
You'll see him again.
You'll see him again. I'll make sure to keep this right this time. So look, I think it's pretty obvious what Wyden's goal is here is to paint RFK Jr. as some sort of anti-vax conspiracy theorist. And go ahead.
He was hostile from the beginning.
Oh,
to hear what he
absolutely.
said, the way he was saying things.
Yep, the way that he even talks to him, and there's other examples of it throughout. He's just you. Like he comes across so aggressive. He comes across so anti everything decent that he just infuriates me. That said, right? Let's not ignore and look, depending on your side of the political aisle, you may either have an extremely positive or an extremely negative association with RFK Jr. That's fine. I don't know a lot about him. I'm just going to be honest. I looked into him a little bit when he ran for president, and overall, I had a pretty positive idea of him as a person. That said, I don't know some of the stuff that these people reference, some of the statements that he's made, some of the things that they claim are facts are kind of negative, man. I mean, let's be honest. But these people don't always tell the truth. So, all right, we're going to get into it now. So, the introduction is from 1542 to 1818. 1542. Here we go.
And I would like to give you a brief introduction.
Here we go.
The son of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr. has been an advocate for consumers since 1985. After graduating from Harvard University, Mr. Kennedy studied at the London School of Economics and received his law degree from the University of Virginia Law School and a master's degree in environmental law from Pace University.
I mean,
He has founded 2 advocacy groups and has spent the last 40 years working to restore and protect children's health. He was a former independent candidate in the 2024 presidential election, and President Trump nominated him this year to be in November of 2024 to be the HHS secretary. In announcing his nomination, President Trump stated, Mr. Kennedy will restore these agencies to the traditions of gold standard scientific research and beacons of transparency and end the chronic disease epidemic and make America great and healthy again. Before you give your opening statement, Mr. Kennedy, I have 4 obligatory questions that we ask all nominees before this committee. First, is there anything that you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
Right. No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do you know of any reason, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, I do not.
Do you agree without reservation to respond to any reasonable summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes, I do.
And finally, do you commit to providing a prompt response in writing to any questions addressed to you by any senator of this committee?
I love this
Yes,
answer.
I do.
Thank you,
Love
Mr.
this.
Kennedy.
Wow.
And before you begin,
This isn't
if
it.
you would
I
like
thought
to,
this
you
was a
may
different
introduce
spot.
your wife and children.
Yes. My wife, Cheryl Hines, is here. My daughter, Kit Kennedy, my son, Bobby Kennedy, his wife, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, and my nephew, Jackson Hines, is here too.
We welcome
Okay.
you all. Thank you. You may proceed with your statement.
All right. His family came out to support him, which I think is fantastic. I find it interesting that that's what they chose to focus on. I don't know if you saw the pop-up under his name. It said Robert F. Kennedy was an independent candidate for the presidency. He is known for his opposition to vaccines.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
Yeah, hold on.
I shouldn't be surprised.
Right.
President,
Where's it at? There it is.
Okay.
Yep. So, and that's C-SPAN. I mean, is that
Yeah, they're supposed to be neutral.
right? They're supposed to be neutral. All right. So we're gonna move on to. I do want to say though, guys. So, and they get into it a little more. I am not a doctor or a scientist. I have no idea what works, what doesn't. What I will say is, if there's any chance that something that's being injected into someone is going to cause more harm than good, we should definitely not be doing that. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So let's see here. Our next clip
1819.
he launches into his introduction, and I think it's a good one. Here we go.
Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member.
We're going to 2657. So 1819 to 2657. And the name of this video is from C-SPAN. It's on YouTube. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Senate confirmation hearing to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Here we go.
Wyden and members of this distinguished committee. I'm humbled to be sitting here today as President Trump's nominee to oversee the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I want to thank President Trump for entrusting me to deliver on his promise to make America healthy again. I also want to thank Cheryl and Kik and Bobby and all of my other children who are here today, and all the many members of my large extended family for the love that they have so generously shared. Ours has always been a family that has been involved in public service, and I look forward to continuing that tradition.
Do you recognize? I'm going to pause very briefly because I'm going to ask Shawn. See this lady right here with the red lipstick?
I see her.
Can you see her?
Yeah,
Do you
what
know who
about-
she is by any chance?
I don't.
Okay. I was just curious. I didn't know if she was somebody
No.
that you knew of. She's very, very pro Kennedy. Keep an
Okay.
eye on her when he talks.
My journey into the issue of health began with my career as an environmental attorney, working with hunters and fishermen and mothers in a small town in the Hudson Valley and along the Hudson River. I learned very early on that human health and environmental injuries are intertwined. The same chemicals that kill fish make people sick also.
Yep.
Today, Americans' overall health is in grievous condition. Over 70% of adults and a third of children are overweight or obese.
74%, right? Or 70
I
70
think
or
he said
74?
70.
Hold on.
70% of adults and a
70%.
third of children are
70% of adults, so 7 out of 10 adults, dude, and a third of children are overweight, obese, not just overweight, obese,
overweight or obese.
overweight or obese.
Diabetes is 10 times more prevalent than it was during the 1960s.
10
Cancer
times.
among young people is rising by 1 or 2% a year. Autoimmune diseases, neurodevelopmental disorders, Alzheimer's, asthma, ADHD, depression, addiction, and a host of other physical and mental health conditions are all on the rise, some of them exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
The United States has worse health than any other developed nation, yet we spend more on healthcare, at least double, and in some cases triple, as other countries.
Yeah.
Last year, we spent 4.8 trillion, not counting the indirect costs of missed work. That's almost a fifth of GDP. It's tantamount to a 20% tax on the entire economy. No wonder America has trouble competing with countries that pay a third of what we do for health and have better outcomes and a healthier workforce.
I agree.
But I don't want to make this too much about money. It's the human tragedy that moves us to care. President Trump has promised to restore America's global strength and to restore the American dream, but he understands we can't be a strong nation when our people are so sick. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person has only one. Today, over half of our countrymen and women are chronically ill.
Yeah.
When I met with President Trump last summer, I discovered that he is more than just concerned for this tragic situation, but genuine care. President Trump is committed to restoring the American dream, and 77 million Americans delivered a mandate to him to do just that, due in part to the embrace and elevation of the Make America Healthy Again movement. This movement, led largely by Maha moms from every state, you can see many of them
Here we
behind
go.
us
Watch
today, and in the hallways and in the lobbies,
Look,
is one of the most
see her nodding.
transcendent
I
and
think-
powerful movements I've ever seen.
This, I had seen this before when they were on, it was a different channel, but the same clip. And it stayed on him when he was talking, and she was really smiling and nodding along. So I think she's probably one of what, like he said, the Maha moms, the Make
Okay.
America Healthy Again, because she was very like animated when he
That
started
might
talking.
be,
about
what's her name? The food babe. Now I think about it.
it. Is it? Could be. I don't know who she is. I just found it interesting. She was so enraptured with like what he said and everything.
Megan Kelly's on the other side.
Who?
Megan Kelly.
Oh yeah, that is Megan Kelly. Now that you mean, yeah, okay.
I promise President Trump that if confirmed, I will do everything in my power to put the health of Americans back on track. And I've been greatly heartened to discover a deep level of care among members of this committee too, both Democrats and Republicans. I came away from our conversations confident.
They look incredibly concerned, don't they? I'm just saying. They look
Yeah, they're not even
riveted
taking it serious.
and extremely concerned about the health of you and me.
That we can put aside our divisions for the sake of a healthier America. For a long time, the nation has been locked in a divisive healthcare debate about who pays. Oh, when healthcare costs reach 20%, there are no good options, only bad ones.
Yeah.
Shifting the burden around between government and corporations and insurers and providers and families is like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Our country will sink beneath a sea of desperation and debt if we don't change the course and ask, why are healthcare costs so high in the first place?
Yeah.
The obvious answer is chronic disease. The CDC says 90% of healthcare spending goes toward managing chronic disease.
90%? Is that what he said?
That's what he said.
As 90% of healthcare spending goes toward
Yeah.
managing chronic disease.
Okay. I'm just going to stop here very briefly. This is what people are talking about when they say Big Pharma has no incentive to cure disease.
No.
Because 90% of the income is from managing it.
Which hits lower income Americans the hardest.
Yes.
The president's pledge is not to make some Americans healthy again, but to make all of our people healthy again. There is no single culprit in chronic disease. Much as I have criticized certain industries and agencies, President Trump and I understand that most of their scientists and experts genuinely care about American health. Therefore, we will bring together all stakeholders in pursuit of this unifying goal. Before I conclude, I want to make sure the committee is clear about a few things. News reports have claimed that I'm anti-vaccine or anti-industry. I am neither. I am pro-safety.
No.
We'll have order.
I don't know why people think
Please
that this
proceed,
is the
Mr.
time to do that.
That seems to be one of the favorite tactics these days of the activist crowd is they'll go to a hearing and they'll scream until they get kicked out because that's what's going to happen. What have you accomplished exactly?
Yeah.
Other than slowing it down for a minute, getting your little
And you look like a pinhead.
getting your little 5 minutes of internet fame, and then you look idiotic. Like people can't understand you when you yell out like that. On the recordings that people are watching, we can't understand a word you're saying.
I am pro-safety. I worked for years to raise awareness about the mercury and toxic chemicals in fish, and nobody called me anti-fish.
That's true.
And I believe that that vaccines play a critical role in healthcare. All of my kids are vaccinated. I've written many books on vaccines. My first book in 2014, the first line of it is, I am not anti-vaccine, and the last line is, I am not anti-vaccine. Nor am I the enemy of food producers. American farms are the bedrock of our culture, of our politics, of our national security. I was a 4-H kid, and I spent my summer working on ranches. I went to work with our farmers. I want to work with our farmers and food producers to remove burdensome regulations and unleash American ingenuity. MAHA simply cannot succeed without a partnership, a full partnership of American farmers. In my advocacy, I've often disturbed the status quo by asking uncomfortable questions. Well, I'm not going to apologize for that. We have massive health problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit before you today and seek your support and partnership in this endeavor. I will conclude with a promise. The members of this committee, to the president, and to all the tens of millions of parents across America, especially the moms, who have propelled this issue to center stage. Should I be so privileged as to be confirmed, we will make sure our tax dollars support healthy foods. We will scrutinize the chemical additives in our food supply. We will remove financial conflicts of interest from our agencies. We will create an honest, unbiased, gold standard science at HHS, accountable to the president, to Congress, and to the American people.
That'd be nice.
We will reverse the chronic disease epidemic and put the nation back on the road to good health. Thank you.
Okay. I think a great opening statement from him. It's frustrating to see so many talking points continue to be pushed, right? The idea that he's anti-vaccination. And again, they get into it more with direct questioning. But yeah, really good statement. I think if people if they didn't already have their minds made up, I think this would have been a great message. But let's face it, you can look at the faces of these people and know they're not listening to anything he's saying. They're waiting for their chance to go after him.
And then it goes right into the next clip.
Yep. The next clip is Senator Crapo from Idaho. Crapo from Idaho, 2658, right after this, to 3107. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, I will begin. Each of us will have 5 minutes to ask you questions, and then at the conclusion of the hearing, if there are further questions, there will be an opportunity for those questions to be submitted to you, and I ask that you respond to them promptly. Mr. Kennedy, you have emphasized the importance of nutrition in preventing and managing chronic disease, improving health outcomes, and reducing health costs. I share your interest in the relationship between our diet and our well-being. And if confirmed, I look forward to partnering with you on those efforts. Would you share with the committee why you are passionate about the nutrition-oriented disease prevention and what you have learned?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I had 11 brothers and sisters. I had dozens of first cousins.
That's a lot.
I was raised in a time where we did not have a
there was
chronic
a lot of
disease
them.
epidemic.
This is
When
important.
my uncle was president, 2% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, 66% have.
2% in the 60s to 66% now. there's way more going on here than just what's in our food, than just like, I agree with his opening statement insofar as there are so many contributing factors. It's not a single source, but we have to fix this to have any hope of being the superpower into the future. We have to fix the health of our citizens. We have to.
Chronic disease. We spend zero on chronic disease during 66%, 2% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, 66% have chronic disease. We spend zero on chronic disease during the Kennedy administration. Today, we spend $4.3 trillion a year. With 77% of our kids cannot qualify for military service. When I was a kid, the typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his or her lifetime, 40 or 50-year career. One out of every 3 kids who walks through her office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic.
That is a horrifying statistic.
That is
Horrifying. And it explains a lot because we have seen such a rapid and insipid rise of diabetes everywhere in this country. Why?
And the most recent data from NIH shows 38% of teens are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Autism rates have gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 1,500, depending on what studies you look at. In my generation today, 70-year-old men, 1 in 34 in my kids' generation. We've seen this explosion of autoimmune disease, of allergic diseases. This is not just a economic issue. It's not just a national security issue. It is a spiritual issue, and it is a moral issue.
I agree.
We cannot live up to our role as an exemplary nation, as a moral authority around the world, when we're writing off an entire generation of kids.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And if confirmed, how could we work together to integrate nutrition-based interventions into our healthcare programs like Medicaid and Medicare?
Well, there are many ways that we can do that. A federal funding of the SNAP program, for example, and of school lunch programs could be a driver for helping kids. We shouldn't be giving 60% of the kids in school processed food that is making them sick. We shouldn't be spending 10% of the SNAP program on sugared drinks. So we have a direct ability to change things there. We also, in Medicaid and Medicare, we need to focus more on outcome-based medicine, on putting people in charge of their own health care, of making them accountable for their own health care so they understand the relationship between eating and getting sick. Most importantly, we need to deploy NIH and FDA to doing the research to understand the relationship between these different food additives and chronic disease so that Americans understand it and make sure that Americans are aware of it. I don't want to take food away from anybody. If you like a cheeseburger, a McDonald's cheeseburger, a Diet Coke, which my boss loves,
no doubt.
you should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that, but you should know what the impacts are on your family and on your health.
Thank you.
Okay, so briefly, yeah, I agree with him. As I believe in free trade, right? I believe in regular, normal, I guess, capitalism. You make a product, you sell that product. If people want to buy it, they buy it. We have way too much government regulation and way too many bans and can't have this, can't have that. That said, you should know a lot better what it's going to do to your body. Our health education in this country is abysmal. Our food pyramid is wrong. There's so much wrong. And the stats, I wanted to make sure that Shawn included this particular clip because in my opinion, this was a much stronger statement than even his opening statement because it really highlights just from the 60s, man. That's not that long ago. I mean, it is, but it's not. Like, what a huge jump. I mean, it's terrifying.
Yeah, that's from when my dad was a kid.
Right. Like 1 in 1,500 versus 1 in
Yeah.
34 now, something 1 in 30 something now. Like, and my wife and I, if you guys watch the channel for any amount of time, you know that my wife is a Medicaid waiver case manager. So she works with autistic people. And so there is a massive shortage in that industry for certain classifications of employees. One of them is those that work with the autistic that are severely autistic and they require basically these facilities. Okay. The people in charge of those facilities, there's a massive need for them. They need like another 50,000 of them.
50,000.
Yeah, because of the sheer volume of people who are autistic now.
Wow.
And these aren't, here's the thing, right? The common answer when you ask, well, why do we have so many now? Better testing, better
Yeah,
diagnosis, right? Better diagnosis. We were diagnosing way more. I'm not talking about the people who are like who have a little OCD or who need to stem or like there's a ton of a range there, right? And there are those that are barely on the spectrum, and then there are those that are disabled because of it. They will never hold a job. They have trouble operating in society. That's who we're talking about. And there are way more of them. And you don't misdiagnose that shit.
no.
Like, there's an issue here. That's not something that, well, I thought you just didn't like cats. I didn't know you were allergic to them kind of thing. It's not like that. I mean, there's an obvious massive boost. We need to identify why. All right. So we go right into Senator Wyden and oh boy, 3108 to 3830. We got like 7.5 minutes of this guy. I can't stand this dude, but it is a very interesting exchange. Pay attention.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questions, I'd like to start by entering into the record a letter the committee received from Ambassador Carolyn Kennedy outlining what she believes is Mr. Kennedy's lack of personal fitness for the office.
Without a
Yeah. And bear in mind, guys, they also got Donald Trump's cousin or sister or aunt or something to talk all kinds of smack about him. There's always someone who will bow down to the corporate overlord. So, yeah.
objection.
I will say there's a heck of a lot of his family there to support him.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing conflicting stories about vaccines. You say one thing and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, "No vaccine is safe and effective." In your testimony today, in order to prove you're not anti-vax, you note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, "You would do anything, pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate your kids." Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true.
Yeah, it can.
Yes, that's the exact same thing I said when I saw this clip. I said, yeah, they can. You can say, yeah, I'm pro this, but you know what? Knowing what I know now, I really wish I could go back and change stuff.
Yeah, and he knows that.
He knows damn
being
good and well.
dishonest. He's being dishonest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This guy's a clown. Like he really is.
So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this. He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective. And I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine
And that's
has
true.
people who are sensitive to them,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
including vaccines.
Right,
Right.
so
He interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden. So bringing this up right now is dishonest.
let's
Uh-huh.
be clear
Because that's what he is.
about what you've actually done then, since you want to deny your statements. For example, you have a history of trying to take vaccines away from people. In May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to not only block Americans from having access to the
Listen.
COVID vaccine, but to prevent any future access to the life-saving vaccine. Are you denying?
Now, he's framing it as if he's trying to ban it completely outright, and you, your brother, your mama can't go get it if you wanted to.
That's what he's trying to
It's
do.
what he's trying to frame it as. But pay attention.
That? Your name is on the petition.
We brought that petition after CDC recommended the COVID vaccine without any scientific basis. Or 6-year-old children. Most experts
6-year-olds.
agree today,
They don't need
even
it.
the people who did it back then, that COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who
Right.
basically have a zero risk from COVID. That's why I brought that lawsuit. I don't want to, I want to emphasize
Mr.
this.
Kennedy,
I don't-
the facts,
Here we go again.
There we go again. But like I said, nobody can understand you. You're just being annoying. And look, they look exactly like I thought they would look. Exactly. They're skinnier than I thought, but other than that.
Comments from the audience are inappropriate and
It is.
out of order.
Inappropriate.
And if there are any further disruptions, the committee will recess until the police can restore order.
Yeah,
Please
they're not
follow
playing.
the rules of the committee.
They're not playing.
Mr. Kennedy, you may proceed.
I also want to point out that your recitation of what happened in Samoa is absolutely wrong, and you know it's wrong, and you know it's
We'll
wrong.
get to that in a moment. Right now, we're
said
talking
you
about
know
the
it's wrong.
petition that you filed to block Americans from having access to the vaccine and
Americans.
to prevent any future access to the vaccine. Those facts are on the record. My third question to you is, you made almost $5 million from book deals, mostly promoting junk science. In 2021, in a book called The Measles Book, you wrote that parents had been, quote, misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease and that measles vaccines are necessary, safe, and effective. The reality is measles are in fact deadly and highly contagious, something that you should have learned after your lies contributed to the deaths of 83 people, most of them children, in a measles outbreak in Samoa. So my question here is, Mr. Kennedy, is measles deadly, yes or no?
The death rate from measles historically in this country in 1963, the year before the introduction of the vaccine, was 1 in 10,000. Let me explain what happened in Samoa. In Samoa in 2017 or 2015, there were 2 kids who died following the MMR vaccine. And the vaccination rates in Samoa dropped precipitously from about 63% to the mid-30s, so they've never been very high. And in 2018, 2 more kids died following the MMR vaccine, and the government of Samoa banned the MMR vaccine. I arrived a year later when vaccination rates were already below any previous level. I went there, nothing to do with vaccines. I went there to introduce a medical informatics system that would digitalize records in Samoa and make health delivery much more efficient. I never gave any public statement about vaccines. You cannot find a single Samoan who will say, I didn't get a vaccine because of Bobby Kennedy. I went in June of 2019. The measles outbreak started in August. Oh, clearly I had nothing to do with the measles. Not only that,
Mr. Kennedy,
Senator, not only that, if you let me finish,
You
Senator,
have had some time.
if
and
you
I'm
let me
gonna
finish,
respond.
Senator, if you let me finish, there are 83 people died. When the tissue samples were sent to New Zealand, most of those people did not have measles. We don't know what was killing them.
Hmm.
The same outbreak occurred in Tonga and Fiji, and no extra people died. There were 7 measles outbreaks in the 13 years prior to my
Chairman, I just
arrival.
would like to get my time back.
I'm sure
The
you would.
nominee wrote a book saying that people had been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. He's trying now to play down his role in Samoa. That's not what the parents say. That's not what Governor Green says. It's time to make sure that we blow the whistle on actually what your views are. At least we're starting.
We need to move
Senator,
on.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of those
Anybody
vaccines.
who believes that ought to look at the measles book you wrote saying parents have been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. That's not true.
We need to move on.
Okay. So as I've stated on multiple occasions, I am not a doctor. I am not
Yeah, I'm not
a
either.
pharmaceutical guy. I couldn't tell you the chemical structure of this stuff. No clue. What I do know is facts, figures. And if you look back, I can't play it for you because they copyright strike me. But if you look back at the Brady Bunch measles episode, and then watch the trailer for Law and Order SVU measles episode, and just look at the difference in the way that it's handled, the way that it's portrayed. That's all. Check it out. Okay, so we're going to move on now to Senator Bennett, Democrat from Colorado. Oh, goody. 52-22.
3-minute clip.
You want to believe him. And
All right, here
Mr.
we go.
Kennedy, I just have there are many, many things in the record, but I hope that you could answer these questions, yes or no. I've tried to ask these in a manner that's faithful to what you actually said, because I didn't want to have a debate about whether you actually said them. So I'm asking you, yes or no, Mr. Kennedy. Did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people, but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted an NIH-funded and NIH published study.
Did you say that it targets?
All he did was quote a study.
Yeah, I remember when that was in the news talking
Mhm.
about, and he
talking
just-
about the genetic structure of the virus and the way that it couldn't bind to certain heritages.
Black and white people, but spared
I
Ashkenazi Jews.
I
and
quoted a
Chinese.
study, Your
Okay.
Honor. I quoted
So
an NIH study that showed
I'll
that
take that as a
certain
yes.
races
I have to
are
move on,
disproportionately.
I have to move on.
I'll take
Did
that
you
as a
say
yes.
that Lyme disease is highly likely a materially engineered bioweapon? I made sure I put in the highly likely. Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that?
And that's what the
Okay,
developer of
I
Lyme
want all
disease
of our
said.
colleagues to hear it,
Mhm.
Mr. Kennedy. I want them to hear it. You said yes. Did you say that exposure to pesticides causes children to become transgender?
No, I never said that.
Okay, I have the record that I'll give to the chairman, and he can make his judgment about what you said. Did you write in your book, and it's undeniable, that African AIDS is an entirely different disease from Western AIDS? Yes or no, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm not sure if I made that.
Okay, I'll give it to the chairman, Mr. Kennedy. And my final question, did you say on a podcast, and I quote, "I wouldn't leave abortion to the states"?
You know, I find it interesting that they're so quick to ask, didn't you say this? Didn't you say this? So a lot of the claims they've said, right, is, oh, you in your book, you wrote this. For better effect, and I would say for a factual basis, if he really actually said these things, why wouldn't they just introduce them? Like, why wouldn't they have him read paragraph 3, page 37, and then have him read his own words from his own book if it's actually saying what they say it's saying? because I've seen
Or have a
them do
clip.
that before.
Or a clip.
Or a
They've
clip,
had-
yeah.
They played a clip before.
Right, but they don't do any of that. They no.
My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have the government involved, even if it's full term. Did you say that, Mr. Kennedy?
Senator, I believe that every abortion is a tragedy.
Did you say it, Mr. Kennedy?
I
This
believe-
matters. It doesn't matter what you come here and say that isn't true, that's not reflective of what you really believe, that you haven't said over decade after decade after decade, because unlike other jobs we're confirming around this place, this is a job where it is life and death for the kids that I used to work for in the Denver public schools and for families all over this country that are suffering from living in the richest country of the world that can't deliver basic health care and basic mental health care to them. It's too.
You know what's hilarious to me? And it's hilarious in a not a ha-ha way, right? This guy has been in government for how long?
For a while.
Why is the healthcare system such shit in this country? Because of you. Because not you, Shawn, but this
I know.
guy. He's
I know
like,
what
wait
you
a
meant.
minute.
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. No,
But I know what
because
you
of
meant.
people just like him who punt the ball every single time and run on these issues so they can never fix them. But we need someone like RFK, in my opinion.
Important for the games that you're playing, Mr. Kennedy. And I hope my colleagues will say to the president, I have no influence over him. I hope my colleagues will say to the president, out of 330 million Americans, we can do better than this.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's funny coming from the party that put Joe Biden and Kamala Harris up as the best.
True.
Just saying. Like, we
Right.
want to talk about better verses.
It goes into the next.
Yeah. So we're going to move right into the next clip here. This is Bennett. We're going into Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, my home state. All right. So we got a little over 7 minutes, I think.
But this is a good clip.
Yeah, right. Just barely over 7 minutes. Again, Senator Cassidy, we're going from 55:30 to 102:43.
We need to move on. Senator Cassidy.
Silence. All right.
Mr. Kennedy, President Trump has sworn to protect Medicare. Republicans are exploring reforms to Medicaid that could help pay for Trump administration priorities. With this context, what will you do about dual eligibles?
About,
Dual eligibles.
well, dual eligibles are not right now served very well under the system.
That's true.
Those are people who are eligible for both Medicaid and Medicare.
Yep.
I suppose my answer to that is to make sure that the programs are consolidated, that they're integrated, and the care is integrated. I look forward to working with you, Dr. Cassidy, on making sure that we take good care of people who are
Thank you.
dual eligible.
And how do you propose that we integrate those programs? Does Medicare pay more, Medicare pay less, Medicaid pay more, Medicaid pay less? How do we do that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure because I'm not in there. I mean, it is difficult to integrate them because Medicare is under fee-for-service. It's paid for by employer taxes. Medicaid is fully paid for by the federal government, and it's not fee-for-service. So I do not know the answer to that. I look forward to exploring options with you.
Republicans, again, are looking at ways to potentially reform Medicaid to help, pay for President Trump's priorities, but to improve outcomes. What thoughts do you have regarding Medicaid reform?
Well, Medicaid is not working for Americans.
No,
And
it's not.
specifically not working for the target population. Most Americans like myself, I'm on Medicare Advantage, and I'm very happy with it. Most people who are on Medicaid are not happy. The premiums are too high. The deductibles are too high. The networks are narrow. The best doctors will not accept it. The best hospitals. And particularly, Medicaid was originally designed for a target population of the poorest Americans.
Mhm.
It's now been dramatically expanded.
Yes.
And the irony of the expansion is that the poorest Americans are now being robbed. Their
Yes.
services have dramatically decreased, even though we've increased the price of Medicare by 60% over the last 4 years. The target population is being robbed.
With
We
that-
need
with
to
that
figure
said,
out other options.
Obviously, you've thought about that, and I appreciate that. What reforms do you recommend, again, that would improve services, I suppose, but also make it more cost efficient?
Well, President Trump has given me the charge of improving quality of care and lowering the price of care for all Americans. There are many things that we can do. I mean, what we want to, the ultimate outcome, I think, is to increase transparency, to increase accountability,
Mhm.
and to transition to a value-based system rather than a fee-based system,
So on
rather than a
Medicaid,
service-based
on
system.
Medicaid in particular, can you just kind of take those kind of general principles and apply it to the Medicaid program?
You know, listen, I think that there are many, many options with telemedicine, with AI right now.
I agree with that.
And, you know, there's
There are
a,
options.
including,
They've, excuse me, in my opinion, need to greatly expand the telehealth options for Medicare and Medicaid recipients because it's very, very limited. They expanded it greatly during the pandemic, right? But then they really nixed most of that. So it's a program that really needs to be expanded because so much could come positive from telehealth. It's a lot less expensive. It's a lot easier to arrange transportation. Obviously, you don't need to go anywhere, right? These are all like really good. And ultimately it saves a ton of money.
Yeah.
direct primary care systems. We're seeing that movement grow across the country. There's one of the largest providers.
So going back to Medicaid though, and speaking of these specific advances, what reforms are you proposing with these ideas vis-a-vis Medicaid?
Well, I don't have a broad proposal for dismantling the program.
Of course not saying that.
I think what we need to do is we need to experiment with pilot programs in each state. We need to keep our eye on the ultimate goal, which is value-based care, which is transparency, accountability, access.
And one more thing, going back to Medicare, you mentioned you're an MA. You mentioned earlier the Medicare fee for service. Do you have any kind of thoughts as to whether or not patients on fee for service should move into MA, or how should we handle that?
Whether patients
who are on Medicare fee for
and
service.
traditional Medicare,
Yes.
that's their choice right now. We have, I think, 32 million Americans, or 30 million Americans on Medicare, on traditional Medicare, and then another 34 or 34 on Medicare Advantage, roughly half and half. And I think more people would rather be on Medicare Advantage because it offers very good services, but people can't afford it. It's much more expensive. Oh, in answer to your first question, there are all kinds of exciting things that we can be doing, including cooperatives, which President Trump has supported, including health savings accounts, which President Trump has supported. But all of these things to make people more accountable for their own health.
And so we'd bring the cooperatives and the health savings accounts into Medicare and Medicaid?
Exactly. We try to increase those, the use of those, and to direct primary care, to continue to transition into a value-based program that is private. Americans don't, by and large, do not like the Affordable Care Act.
No.
People are on it. They don't like Medicaid.
It's awful.
They like
is.
Medicare. And they like private insurance.
Right.
we need to listen to what people, they would prefer to be on private insurance.
Sure.
Most Americans, if they can afford to be,
If they,
will
that's
be
the
on
key.
private insurance. We need to figure out ways to improve care, particularly for elderly, for veterans, for the poor in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And Medicaid, the current model is not doing that. I would ask, any of the Democrats who are chuckling just now,
Yeah.
do you think all that money, the $900 billion that we're sending to Medicaid every year, has made Americans healthy? Do we think it's working for anybody?
No,
That is a fantastic question. It really
Uh-huh.
is.
he swung back.
He did. He did. And that's what I mean. He hits back in this, and there's some really good moments coming up.
Are the premiums low enough?
Right. That
We do need to move on.
All right.
Senator Warner.
okay. So we're gonna skip ahead a little bit, but I agree with him wholeheartedly. I mean, look at the amount of money we spend on the healthcare system in this country. We all know it's the most expensive on the planet, right? And yes, we do have medical tourists, but bear in mind the medical tourists that we get are the people that can afford
Yep.
to pay the prices for the top of the line medical care. It exists, but it's prohibitively expensive. As people who, I'm very familiar with medical debt. Let me just say that. I'm very familiar with medical debt. I had to declare medical bankruptcy because I had so many medical bills from my on-the-job injury and moving forward, right? The medical care in this country has room for improvement.
It does.
I will say the further up the chain you go as far as like emergency medicine, the better it gets, in my opinion. The chronic sufferers, the long-term care is a profit-based, drain them dry kind of deal. But trauma care, like serious critical injury, in my opinion, the U.S. top of the line, right? You get a heart transplant, you get like all that stuff. If you can afford it, oh yeah. But the average American doesn't stand a chance. Do you think that all the money that we spend on this is producing quality health care? Absolutely not. All right. Our next clip is Senator Langford.
And I think this is a key clip for the whole hearing.
Okay. So pay attention. 110:31
And
to
I can explain
112.
after.
What's that?
I'll explain after the clip's
Okay.
done.
So 110. All right, here we go.
I think that's a pretty fair perspective on that. I do want to talk to you about some areas that you and I have talked about as well. We have some disagreements, you and I, on the issue of life and when life begins on that. You've been very outspoken on that, and we've had some good opportunities to be able to talk about that. Title 10 is specifically in the HHS area. This has been an area that has been interpreted for a long time, and President Trump in the first administration interpreted that rule to say that his administration will prohibit the performance, referral for, or promotion of abortion as a part of the Title 10 program. That he made that very clear in the first administration. Obviously, that's his decision to make again on that, on how he wants to handle that, and he's made a lot of public statements on that. The Biden administration not only reversed that, not only rescinded that rule, but they went one step the other direction. In my state in Oklahoma, as you and I have talked about, the Biden administration cut off funding to the state of Oklahoma for AIDS testing, for breast cancer screening, and for other areas of poverty healthcare because my state didn't promote abortion. It wouldn't provide. If my state wouldn't promote abortion in the state, we got cut off for federal funds for AIDS testing and for other things.
That is insane. That is insane, guys. Like AIDS testing and dude, why? Because you won't promote abortion, not just allow it, but promote it.
Question to you is, how are you going to handle Title 10 on that? I saw how President Biden handled that in the punitive measures that came on my state for those that are in rural health care. How are you going to handle Title 10?
I'm going to support President Trump's policies on Title 10. I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy. I agree with him that we cannot be a moral nation if we have 1.2 million abortions a year. I agree with him that the states should control abortion. President Trump has told me that he wants to end late-term abortions, and he wants to protect conscious exemptions, and that he wants to end federal funding for abortions here or abroad. That's Title 10. I serve at the pleasure of the president. I'm going to implement his policies.
Thank you for that.
I serve at the pleasure of the president, and I'm going to implement his policies.
And this is an important clip because there's some Republicans in the Senate who were nervous about his nomination over that issue, abortion,
Okay.
that were possibly going to vote against it. But I think his answer was great.
I think it was phenomenal. I really do.
And he's pro-choice. Everybody knows that. But that doesn't really matter because he's going to implement
President
what Trump
Trump's-
wants.
Yes.
And he made that very clear in that clip.
And I'm glad he did. I'm really glad he did because, like people have said, and you just said it, he's pro-choice. He believes that a woman has the right to do what she wants. We'll just leave it there. We've talked before about it, but I'm glad to see that he's going to implement the policies that his boss wants.
And for those people who were worried, oh, he could just say that now, but he is going to be accountable with the Trump.
Oh yeah, Trump can boot him out at any time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and get somebody else.
Yes.
So briefly, before we move on,
All right.
so there's this whole big thing going on about the buyout of the federal
Yep.
workers, right? I read, I don't have the article in front of me, but maybe it's something we can revisit at another time. I read that the way that Trump did it, none of the nominees are confirmed yet because there's a length of time that the director has to be the director before they can fire people. But because he had the holdovers, he hadn't replaced any of them yet, that he was able to mass fire people.
Really?
Yeah. I'll let you dig into that. Like I said, I don't
that.
have the article in front of me, but I read an article on it and I was like, oh,
I have not heard
interesting.
that.
Yeah, because
We'll have to do an episode on that.
yeah, we'll have to do an episode on it because there's at least one individual that I heard about that refused to leave. She refused to accept her firing, so they walked her out. I mean, what did you think would happen?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and like people have said, you can figure that out in court. Like by all
She
means,
probably wanted to make a scene.
that's what I'm thinking. All right, we're gonna move on. You guys are very patient, and I appreciate that. We're going to what's our next one? Senator Hassan. Yep. For Democrat from New Hampshire, and that is at 128.33.
Yep.
128.33, and we're going to 134.25.
Kennedy. Senator Hassan.
Thank you,
Hassan.
Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Wyden, and welcome, Mr. Kennedy, and to your family as well. I want to start with a couple of concerns I have, and just briefly on Medicaid. States share in the funding of Medicaid. Millions of disabled children in this country are alive because of Medicaid. Millions of people with addiction in this country are in recovery because of the services provided to them by Medicaid. And millions of chronically ill people who, until Medicaid expansion was enacted, who couldn't get health care and therefore couldn't work because they were too sick, got health care through Medicaid expansion, then went back to work, and now they're on private insurance.
Right.
So those are some facts about Medicaid that you might want to brush up on. Now, I'm also extremely concerned
Doesn't mean that
about
the
your
system
endorsement
doesn't
of
have to be
radical
reformed.
fringe conspiracies that, if implemented at HHS, would put American families' lives at risks.
Here
Vaccines
we go.
are one of our greatest public health triumphs. And you don't need, I'm not talking about abstract medical science. One of the people who helped raise me was my grandfather, who was a pediatrician. He practiced medicine in this country from 1921 until the mid-1980s. And I heard details about the difference those vaccines made in saving lives in the children who were under his care. Vaccination has helped to eradicate many deadly diseases in the United States, including polio and smallpox, something we should be proud of as Americans. I am extremely concerned that as Secretary, you would be able to halt critical vaccine research and to exploit parents' natural worries by advising them not to vaccinate their children. This will lead to more children getting sick, and some will even die. Before the measles vaccine, about 500 American children died a year from measles. This is too much of a risk for our country, and there is no reason that any of us should believe that you have reversed the anti-vaccine views that you have promoted for 25 years. For example, you have previously falsely suggested that the polio vaccine killed many, 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 many more people than polio ever did by causing fatal cancers, while rigorous safety studies show that to be completely false. Now, let's go to something we agree upon. I am really heartened to see that one area where we agree on is on women's reproductive freedom. In your own words, it's not the government's place to tell people what to do with their bodies. You said that, correct? Yep. Mr. Kennedy, in 2023, you came to New Hampshire and said, quote, I'm pro-choice. I don't think the government has any business telling people what they can or cannot do with their body. So you said that, right?
Yes.
Yep. But you also said we need to trust the women to make that choice because I don't trust government to make any choices. You said that too, right?
Yes.
It is remarkable that you have such a long record of fighting for women's reproductive freedom, and really great that my Republican colleagues are so open to voting for a pro-choice HHS secretary. So, Mr. Kennedy, I'm confused. You have clearly stated in the past that bodily autonomy is one of your core values. The question is, do you stand for that value or not? When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
What?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy, that we can't be a moral authority in this country.
Right. So, but that isn't what you said back in New Hampshire in 2023. My question is exactly when did you decide to sell out your life's work and values to get this position?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
So what you're telling us, just to be clear, because my time is limited.
You know, I'm just going to say this. This reminds me a lot of the way the Democrats answered questions. They would just repeat the same thing over and over. Y'all were fine with that. As a matter of fact, y'all celebrated that. But when it comes to RFK, all of a sudden y'all got a problem with that kind of behavior.
What she's trying to do is taint his nomination.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
I know.
Trying to get Republicans
Is
not
that
to vote for him.
regardless of what you believe, regardless of what values you have, if President Trump tells you to do something, you're going to do it. You said just now the discussion about mifepristone. Oh, he's asked me to study the safety of it. Here are the safety studies that tell us mifepristone is safe and effective. And I asked Ms.
And those are from the manufacturer, by the way, just so everybody knows. All of these safety studies, unless they're independently done by a regulating agency such as the FDA, HHS, these are all paid for by the drug companies. That's how the research gets done. That's how they fund this crap.
Mr. Chair, that these about 40 studies be admitted to the record by unanimous consent.
Without objection.
So the studies are there. The safety is proved. The science is there. But what you're telling us is if President Trump orders you to take action to make it harder for women to get direly needed health care, you'll follow his order. If Mr. Trump, as he did yesterday, orders a halt on Medicaid payments that are essential for taking care of people with disabilities all around this country, you're going to follow that order because you are willing to sacrifice your values, your knowledge, if President Trump tells you to do that. That, to me, is unacceptable in a Secretary of Health and Human Services.
As I explained before, the White House has issued a statement saying that that policy will not deprive any American
Yeah,
of
the
benefits.
problem is the White House issued that statement only after we pointed out the damage it would do, and it became politically uncomfortable for them. You know what else that freeze on federal funding did? It halted funds for critical research that could cure pediatric cancer. So if the president
Because the 10 minutes while that snafu was being figured out, that was the time, guys. That 10 minutes that the funding was frozen, that's when Marguerite would have unlocked the code that has fucking eluded these people for generations. It's the 10 minutes while the funds were frozen. Get out of here with that ridiculous shit. These people are unbearably stupid.
tells you to do that, you're going to stop that too. That's enough.
Oh my God. Like, genuine question, guys. The people that are like her, are they like that all the time? Are they just angry all the time? It
I wonder
seems
that
that
too.
way. It
Yeah.
really does. All right. So we're gonna move on to Senator Johnson from Wisconsin. Johnson from Wisconsin. We got several rhymers up here, man. I love it. All right. 148.22 to 155.36.
Keep going. That's
Yep, a
Barrasso.
little more.
Thank you,
No,
Mr.
keep
Chairman.
going.
Yep.
Oh, okay. You're right.
Yeah.
My
Senator
bad.
I
Johnson.
got it. It's okay. No worries.
Mr.
Senator
Kennedy,
Johnson from
welcome.
Wisconsin.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your decades-long advocacy for a clean environment, for children's health. I can't say as I'm surprised by the hostility on the other side.
Right.
I'm highly disappointed in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember when you called me up and you were contemplating setting your political differences aside, joining forces with President Trump on an area of agreement, addressing chronic illness, trying to find the root cause of all these problems facing this nation. My first response was, Bobby, this is an answer to my prayers. We need to get to the answers of this, but even more,
Yes,
we need to heal and unify this divided
We do.
nation.
we really do.
I'm not necessarily the most optimistic guy because we've got enormous challenges facing this nation. But I thought, wow, here's somebody from the left, somebody I don't agree with on many issues
Right.
politically,
Yeah.
coming together with President Trump and focusing on an area of agreement, something that the American people desperately want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Finding out the answers. What has caused autism?
Right.
What is causing chronic illness? Ms. Kennedy, I think I've come to know what's in your heart. I think I know the personal and political price you've paid for this decision.
Yeah.
I want to say publicly, I thank you for that. I truly appreciate what you're doing
Yes.
here.
I do too.
Can't we come together as a nation and
Yes.
do this?
Please. We need
Can
that.
we do? Aren't you getting
We
tired
really
of
do.
this?
Yes.
I'm getting tired of this.
Yes.
So again, Mr. Kennedy, I need to enter in the record. These are just 11 letters of support signed by 63,000 people, thousands of doctors.
Yeah.
Wow.
From the American Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, Independent Medical Alliance, the North Carolina Physicians and Freedom Group, Governor Jeff Landry from Louisiana.
Wow.
These are Americans, nonpartisan.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Democrats
A
and
lot of these people,
Republicans.
I know because I've advocated with you. A lot of them are Democrats.
Yeah.
They put their political differences aside. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter this
For the
in
good of the
record.
country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also do want to, Mr. Kennedy, as long as I have you here, I've written over 70 oversight letters to the federal health agencies under the Biden administration. I've virtually gotten squat out of them, okay? What I get is we get, for example, 50 pages of Anthony Fauci's emails redacted.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the latest one was
But remember, ladies and gentlemen, the most transparent administration ever.
They say it enough, they think it's going to come true.
Exactly. Yeah. If you repeat a lie often enough, people will think it's the truth.
17 pages. Instead of issuing a health alert on the myocarditis they knew was impacting young men early in 2021, instead of issuing an alert on the Health Alert Network, they developed 17 pages of talking points. This was given to the public under a FOIA request. They had to go to court. They've got a new way of redacting. They don't black things out. They just give you white pages. So you don't even know what they have redacted.
Wow.
So again, I've issued a subpoena now to cover the information I've requested in 70 oversight letters. My question to you is, as Secretary of HHS, will you honor these requests from Congress and will you make HHS transparent?
Yeah, my approach to HHS, as I said before, Senator, is radical transparency. Democrats and Republicans ought to be able to come in and get information that was generated at taxpayer expense, that is owned by the American taxpayer.
I love this answer, by the way.
Okay.
I'm super excited about the possibility that he's being honest. I mean, let's face it, any of these people, we don't know who they really are. I don't know these people, but
I think he's honest.
I think he's being honest about his intention of radical transparency.
He's being sincere.
Yeah, I think he's being sincere.
They shouldn't get redacted documents. Public health agencies should be transparent. And if we want Americans to restore trust in the public health agencies, we need transparency. I want to say something about what you first said. When I launched my campaign, it was about uniting Americans, Democrats and Republicans. There's no issue that should unite us more than this chronic health epidemic. There's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. These are our kids. 66% of them are damaged. I know what a healthy kid looks like.
Right?
Because I had so many of them in my family. I didn't know anybody with a food allergy growing up.
No.
Peanut allergy.
No.
Why do 5 of my kids have that?
There was one kid at my school who had a peanut allergy. How many did you have?
In elementary, I can remember only like 1 or 2.
Right. 1 or 2, maybe. Yeah. Usually 1.
I was a
Sometimes.
90s kid.
What's that?
90s kid. So in the 90s, it was like 1 or 2.
Yeah. I was born in the 70s, mid 70s. So I was mostly an 80s kid. Like one dude in the whole school.
Yeah, I remember 1 or 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Or one girl that was, like deathly allergic to bees or something. Right. But you didn't hear about all these allergies and all these chronic conditions.
And it's a lot now.
It's a lot now. Yeah.
Allergies. Why are we seeing? Why do 5 of my kids have allergies? Why are we seeing these explosions in diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, neurological diseases, depression, all of these things that are related to toxics in the environment? Why can't we just agree with each other to put differences about so many issues, intractable issues aside, and say, we're going to end this? I don't think anybody is going to be able to do this like I have because of my peculiar experience, because I've litigated against these agencies. When you litigate against them, you get a PhD in corporate capture and how to unravel it.
No, I agree with that.
I've written
Absolutely.
6 books about these agencies. I know a lot about them and I know how to fix it. And there's nobody who will fix it the way that I do because I'm not scared of vested interests. I don't care. I'm not here because I want a position or a job. I have a very good life and a happy family.
That's true.
This is something I don't need. I want to do this because we're going to fix it. And the other thing is we are attracting now a caliber of people to HHS like never before in history. And they're entrepreneurs, they're disruptors, they're innovators of immense talent that are walking away, many of them from growing concerns. They're not coming there for position. They're coming there because they want to save our country. And they're from across the political spectrum. And all these Democrats are opposed to me for partisan issues. They used to be my
Exactly.
friends.
Yeah.
That's the
Agreed
sad
with
thing.
me on all the environmental issues that
Yeah.
I've been working on for my whole career. Now they're against me because anything that President Trump does, any decision he makes,
Yep.
has to be lampooned, derided, discredited, marginalized, vilified.
We need to move on.
Trump deranged syndrome.
Yep. TDS. Speaking of TDS, did you see the clip with Jimmy Kimmel where he made the claim that if you basically any reasonable person should have TDS?
No,
Yeah. Look it up, guys.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised either. But, according to him, he's not hysterical. That's his claim, even though he's obviously hysterical. But any reasonable person should absolutely have
I don't
TDS.
even watch those shows anymore.
I can't. No, I can't. All right. So here's the thing, right? I want to inform you guys. So the last
the last two.
the last two clips are Pocahontas, Democrat senator from Massachusetts. She wow.
Yeah.
Before
Hold
we
on to your
launch in,
seats.
hold
on to your seats.
on to your seats. Before we launch in, I want you guys to be aware that according to Open Secrets 2019 to 2024, her campaign committee received $126,056 from pharmaceuticals / health products. Now, her presidential campaign, this page shows contributions sorted by industry to the candidate's campaign committee, plus super PACs or hybrid PACs, right? Well, what do we have here? We have pharmaceuticals and health products, and we have $625,000. So between the two, $750,000 she has received from Big Pharma. Keep that in mind while we jump in to everybody's favorite fake Indian.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kennedy, I want to start with something that I think you and I agree on.
Oh, boy.
And that is that Big Pharma has too much power in Washington. You said
Why is that?
President Trump asked you to, quote, clean up corruption and conflicts. Sounds great. You've said that you will, quote, slam shut the revolving door between government agencies and the companies they regulate. That also sounds great. So here's an easy question. Will you commit that when you leave this job, you will not accept compensation from a drug company, a medical device company, a hospital system, or a health insurer for at least 4 years, including as a lobbyist or a board member?
Can you just repeat the last part of the question? Can I commit
You're
to
not going
what?
to take money from drug companies in any way, shape, or form.
Who? Me?
Yeah, not you, right? Me. We're talking about me, not you. Who, me? Come on, man. That was an excellent. And the guilt on the face here is just, premium.
Yep.
Absolutely premium.
Yeah, I'm
You're the
happy
one-
to commit to that.
Okay, good. That's what I figured. I said it's an easy question to start with. And I think you're right on this
I don't
question.
think any of them want to give me money, by the way.
Let's keep going. You're right, because to say yes, because every American has the right to know that every decision you make as our #1 health officer is to help them and not to make money for yourself in the future. So I want to talk more about money. I'm looking at your paperwork right now. In the past 2 years, you've raked in $2.5 million from a law firm called Wisner Baum. You go online, you do commercials to encourage people to sign up with Wisner Baum to join lawsuits against vaccine makers. And for everyone who signs up, you personally get paid. And if they win their case, you get 10% of what they win. So if you bring in somebody who gets $10 million, you walk away with $1 million. Now, you just said that you want the American people to know you can't be bought. Your decisions won't depend on how much money you could make in the future. You won't go to work for a drug company after you leave HHS. But you and I both know there's another way to make money. So, Mr. Kennedy, will you also agree that you won't take any compensation from any lawsuits against drug companies while you are secretary and for 4 years afterwards?
Okay, just so you guys know, this one's going to 203:44. I want to point out something while we're paused. Whoops. Thought you guys should know that as of January of 2025, Elizabeth Warren has a net worth of at least $8 million. This number is based on estimates from the homes she shares with her husband's, proceeds from her book sales, savings, mutual funds, and other assets.
For doing public service.
Yeah, for collecting 170 grand a year, she's worth $8 million. Just so you guys know. Why do I say that? Because she makes a big deal out of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s net worth and the money that he could potentially make in the future.
Mhm.
Well, I'll certainly commit to that while I'm secretary. But I do want to clarify something because you're making me sound like a shill. I put
You're the
together
one who
that
got-
case. I did the Science Day presentation to the judge on that case to get it into court, the
Mr.
Daubert
Kennedy,
hearing.
Mr. Kennedy, it's just a really simple question.
Yeah,
You've taken in $2.5 million. I want to know if you will commit right now that not only will you not go to work for drug companies, you won't go to work suing the drug companies and taking your rake out of that while you're secretary and for 4 years after. It's just,
I'll commit to not taking any fees from drug companies while I'm secretary.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug
Yeah.
companies.
No.
Yeah,
I'm not
yes,
gonna
she
do
is.
that,
Drug
Senator.
companies as much
not-
as you want.
I'm not
gonna
gonna
agree
agree
to
to
not sue drug companies or anybody.
So
Yep.
let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could
Now, this is actually very interesting because I want you to pay attention to this part because I want you to think about the flip side, right? All of the changes that you can make. She's going to list a whole bunch of things he could conceivably do as HHS secretary, right? But keep in mind, if it was someone good, if it was someone who was looking out for the best interests of America, all the things they could accomplish. Listen.
publish your anti-vaccine of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list.
Here.
You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint
I
people
don't
to
understand
the
that.
CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the
dirty work.
CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You
Oh, I think we found her real problem. He could potentially remove the liability protection that that pharmaceutical companies enjoy.
Yeah, she gets money from them.
Yes. Yeah, they don't want that to happen.
could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over
Or real
FDA
ones.
data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS. And I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as secretary will also benefit you financially down the line?
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's
that I
not
am.
the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me,
repeatedly,
Senator,
those
you're
efforts
asking me not to sue
requirements are-
vaccine
No,
pharmaceutical
I am
companies.
not. My
Yeah, you
question
are.
is stop
That's exactly what
enriching
you're doing.
health. Look, no one should be fooled here.
I
As
fought
Yeah, no one
Secretary
should
of
be.
Because if he can, if he can sue drug makers, then she may not get $750,000 moving forward because she didn't do her job, which was to keep him from being able to do that. Just saying. I don't know for sure if that's the way it works, but it's not out. The chance of this is greater than zero. So
HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same.
Whoa. Hold on. Did you hear what she said?
Something about how not vaccinating his kids.
Hold on. I'm going to back it up.
All right.
Listen,
Those of us who want to vaccinate his kids,
those of us who want to vaccinate his
Wow,
kids.
I didn't catch that.
and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids.
Wow. I totally missed that.
Yeah. Yeah, not their kids, his kids.
We know what her agenda is.
Yes, we do.
The bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die,
What?
but Robert
What?
Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
How about then say you won't make money off what you do as Secretary of HHS?
Before we go to Senator Tillis,
Oh, you want to do this
and
part
this part here,
with the opening?
yeah, so it's basically him reminding Senator Warren that he has passed all the ethical requirements, that he's disclosed everything he's ever gotten, that he's
I think
what's that?
I think he was kind of annoyed at Elizabeth
He
Warren.
was. It's kind of long, but you know what? We'll play a little bit of
Okay,
it
let's
just so
play
you
it.
could see
it
how.
would be important for me to make it very clear
Listen.
that Mr. Kennedy has gone through the same Office of Government Ethics process as every single other nominee in the Finance Committee this year and in previous administrations. In addition to listing his assets, including the items that you've identified, he has signed an ethics letter that has been reviewed by the Office of Government Ethics concerning any possible conflict in light of its functions and the nominee's proposed duties. And we have a letter from the Office of Government Ethics that he hasn't complied completely with all applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest.
You want to
We got one more clip
from her?
from her. Yay. But I will say this one again, I would urge you, especially if you guys are just dropping in and you haven't been here the whole time, I would urge you to pay very close attention to this particular exchange, especially at the end of it, where Senator Crapo makes sure to set the stage properly. And the look he gives
Yeah.
is something else. It really is. I really urge you guys to pay attention to the intensity behind the eyes and the direct challenge there. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kennedy, I wanted to ask about your role in the 2019 measles outbreak in Samoa. In July 2018, 2 children died immediately after receiving a measles vaccine that nurses had mistakenly mixed with a muscle relaxant. The nurses get charged with manslaughter, but vaccination rates go down. I asked you about this in my office. You told me flatly that your visit to Samoa had nothing to do with vaccinations. We now know that's not true. I have the documentation. You met with the prime minister. You talked about vaccinations. You met with an anti-vaccine influencer who described the meeting as, quote, profoundly monumental for this movement. So what happens? Vaccinations go down. There's a measles outbreak and children start dying. But you double down. You didn't give up. Just 4 days after the prime minister declared a state of emergency, 16 people already dead. You sent a letter to him promoting the idea that the children had died not from measles, but from, quote, defective vaccine. You launched the idea that a measles vaccine caused these deaths. You are a very influential man. In fact, you are called the leader of the Disinformation Dozen.
That's a heck of a name, isn't it?
Yeah, the
The
disinformation.
Disinformation Dozen. I mean, I'd be kind of not gonna lie, man. You guys want to give me a cool ass moniker like that? I'd take it. Just saying, yeah.
UNICEF and WHO, the World Health Organization, investigated this.
Listen.
They say the claims are false.
Now, UNICEF, corrupt ass organization, the WHO, guys, of all the organizations out there, I think we can all, both sides of the aisle these days, and independents can look at the WHO and go, yeah, we can do better. The
Most
WHO,
people, yes.
like, especially the head of it, he, like, there are serious issues there. Whether or not you think most of what they do is positive, there are definitely issues there. And them saying this is good or this is bad or this is right or this is wrong, their opinion holds no weight with me whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I would argue that the WHO claiming something is false makes me want to look at it and think it's true. I'm just saying, by all means, if you guys have a different opinion, let us know. But I urge you to look into them and learn.
It's not biologically possible what you claimed. And yet, ultimately, more than 70 people died because they didn't get vaccines. So my question is, do you accept even a scintilla, just even a sliver of responsibility for the drop in vaccinations and the subsequent deaths of more than 70 people? Anything you do differently?
No, absolutely not. There were two incidents in which children died.
Listen.
In 2015 and again in 2015, it was from the measles vaccine. That's what the New Zealand General Hospital found. The government of Samoa banned the measles vaccine after the 2018. I arrived in July of the next year after the ban had been in place for a year.
Mr.
And the
Chairman,
measles,
understanding that you wanted to hold this to a minute and that I don't get to present all the facts and documentation I've got, how about if we just decide to make entries for the record on exactly what the record shows about Mr. Kennedy's participation? And I think he's answered the.
Okay. Here's why I paused it here. Two reasons. Number one, interesting choice of timing for her to suddenly go, let's just enter stuff into the record, right? She didn't let him finish. He was talking about something I find interesting. What actually happened in Samoa? What's the real story there? He was laying it out. Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas did not want him to continue. Interesting. Now, item number two, what I feel is absolutely critical. Listen to this man and watch his eyes.
The chair.
This is the chair, Mr. Crapo, from, where's he from again? Idaho. Here we go. Again, pay attention to his eyes.
Yes or no question. He takes no responsibility.
Senator Warren, we will
do
do that. And
differently.
Mr. Kennedy, and to all the senators, every senator knows that following this hearing, they will be able to ask you questions off the record and you will be able to put answers back onto the record. So please give that answer. I apologize that we're shutting you off for giving a full response right now.
How can you not look at that and go, oh, there's definitely some messaging there. And the urging, right? The sheer level of, I urge you to do. And he had almost like a slight smile on his face.
Like he knew.
Like he knew something, right? Like he knows something, but can't say it for whatever reason. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to see him get confirmed, especially after some of the statements. I know you were worried about him.
A little bit, yes.
Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe they'll still, get him.
I think he'll get it.
I think he'll get it.
I think he'll get the 50 senators he needs, and then JD Vance will break the tie.
Can break the tie, right? How are you? Okay, so he's called it for RFK Jr., right? Stay. So what's your opinion of Kash Patel? Yes or no?
That one, I'll have to watch his full hearing. I haven't, but that one's really shaky.
Okay, you think that one's shaky. All right, so I think Kash Patel is going to get confirmed. I think they have the votes. I think the real problem they're going to have is Tulsi.
Tulsi's going to be a problem.
I think if there's going to be a problem, I think it's going to be with Tulsi Gabbard.
I'm going to have to watch her hearing from today, too.
I'm sure. Here's the thing, guys. I want to let you know. So we have some programs set up. I'm going to get them plugged in as soon as we're done here. But we have some programs set up to run the next 2 nights. Saturday, well, what's today?
Friday and Saturday?
Yeah, for Friday and Saturday, because I'm going to be out of town. I do have another video I can put up, I believe, for Sunday. But either way, you guys will be covered this weekend. You'll have some content that you can watch. We've got 2 episodes. They're ready to go.
We taped 2 today.
So that you guys could have some content. So number 1 that we have that we're going to run tomorrow night is about the unfortunate accident that happened right by the airport there in DC.
The Reagan National Airport.
Yeah, Reagan National Airport. The Black Hawk helicopter and the civilian airliner collided. We've looked at the video. We have a little bit more information on that we're going to share with you guys tomorrow. We got some names of the victims, unfortunately, but there are a lot of questions. But there are some interesting developments in that regarding the air traffic control numbers, who was present versus who should have been present, stuff like that. It's interesting. The second one is
a conspiracy.
Yeah. It's the tinfoil hat time, right? You guys have reached out and said you enjoy those. So we're doing a tinfoil hat type of thing on the body double one, right? The one that everything's fake, everything's a movie. All the people are actually actors wearing masks, and a lot more than that. It goes pretty wild. It does get pretty wild. I will say there's some parts that have some evidence to suggest that it could be true. Others are just like, just off the wall, man. Just way, way, way out of left field. But who knows? I have reached in 2025. I have reached the part to where I can believe that we have been lied to about anything at this point. Just about. I still having a hard time with that whole flat earth thing. Mainly because they prove themselves wrong and refuse to admit it. But that's a whole other episode. All right, guys. Look, I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this. If you made it this far, thank you. You guys are awesome. We try to present this, try to pick out the most important moments because there's so many clips out there. And if you want to watch the whole thing, it's like 4 or 5 freaking hours. And I don't have that kind of time. Shawn does. But no, he does it for us, which I greatly appreciate. So I think I actually watched probably about half of this one. Normally, I don't get a chance to watch them, which is why we do this together. I was actually able to make it about halfway through this one, but I just didn't have time to finish it. That's why, in my opinion, this is so good. But all right, guys, we'll catch you on the flip side. I hope that everybody has a wonderful evening. And like always, God bless you. God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Good night.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Shawn Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.